How are you doing? Maybe you're feeling a little tense, a little distracted, strangely flat. But even though, on paper, everything in your life is going really well, if you do feel a little bit like that, I don't think you're imagining it, because we live in a distracted and a fragmented world that is struggling to find meaning and coherence. And every day we go out into that big wide world and we take a look around, or we listen to the news, or we look at our social media, our nervous system is taking a jolt. And people will say things like, oh, the world is going mad. And I hear that regularly. But I don't think it does justice to explain just quite how bonkers the world is in which we live in. Now, I would say as men, I think we are especially attuned to something changing in the environment. I do think it feels more dangerous. If you haven't noticed that, I would say go into the nearest major city to where you live, have a look around and tell me, has anything significantly changed in the last 20 years? I'll wager it has. So, especially as men, I think we find ourselves scanning the horizon. Now, in the old days, we would have done it with the Mark I eyeball and we would have looked into the distance and we would have scanned for threats. But only today, the threats, though, are not just in the physical in terms of within visible range. We also spend a lot of time worrying about threats that come to us through our technological device. So we do it technologically, and we are spending increasing number of hours staring into our phone, looking at these small devices where all our fears, our worries, our insecurities are confirmed. And we probably land on the conclusion that the world is truly insane, and through that little device there, we are getting a glimpse of hell. We are staring into the abyss. And that brings us very neatly onto Nietzsche. And he said, whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you. So here's the problem. The way that we were created now demands that we seek control and certainty over our lives. And in the old days, people may have sought oracles, or they may have sought power, or done whatever it was to get control. But these days, we find ourselves looking towards our technological devices, scouring the internet, trying to work out how danger can be avoided. And we reason that if we're somehow better informed, we're going to be better prepared to deal with all the various threats out there. But here's the thing, and I think we all know this, that more information doesn't make us wiser. It's what we actually do with the information that does give wisdom. But we need the right information. But sometimes as well, even when we are getting the right information, we hear about all these existential threats that are out there, but actually there's not a whole lot that you can do about it. And in the sense that we become stuck. So, and we become deceived. And we fall into the trap of trying to seek out more information, trying to understand the problem better. So we doom scroll, we get sucked into even more rage bait, talking heads and YouTube channels, and we are absorbing this constant cultural outrage, all in the belief that somehow by being better informed, we're going to be able to better deal with any problems that are coming at us. The sad truth, though, is that you are not being informed, you are being deformed. And if what you're consuming is making you angrier, and you have no practical outlet for that anger, you're being played. Your brain, in many respects, is a giant prediction machine. It treats all the input that it takes in, whether it comes from a video or it comes from real life, as reality, and it can't distinguish between what is in the real world and what it sees on video. If you feed it crisis and misery, it will let you think that you are living in a war zone. Even when your home is safe and your kids are fine, your synapses and your neurons and everything in your brain is firing away like it's a 4th of July fireworks display. And if you've done this for long enough, as I did, you're going to start to wonder why you're miserable, why you're low energy, why you're sleep deprived, and you're generally dysregulated. You're going to feel a curious numbness, and eventually that will lead to inertia, which has all sorts of problems in life, which prevents you getting on and takes away motivation. You know, I didn't choose to be like this with with my phone, but I just found myself drifting it into what sane person would want to be sucked into this, into the abyss. But I absorbed it all through osmosis, through thinking that I was doing a good thing by getting sucked into the news cycle and thinking that I was being able to somehow defend against various threats. I was looking into the abyss and I was becoming Nietzsche's monster. I was constantly vigilant. I was speaking in absolutes. I was being rather cynical, and I almost felt like my great uncle George in D-Day was it 1939 or 1940, whenever the British were withdrawing from France. I felt like I was fighting a rearguard action against an encroaching enemy. Now, we're not called to live like this. I'm a Christian. I am supposed to be living in joy and in peace, but if you looked at me, there really wasn't much of that in my life. And personally, if I want to even blame some things, I'd even say a little bit about how my earlier part of my life, when how my faith was taught to me about end times theology. I've got a different view on that now, and that's for another video another day. But it started with that, and it's ended in getting sucked into the modern day news cycle. Sure, I do believe that the answer is partly political, and ultimately I know at the end of the day where my vote is going to be cast whenever that day comes, but I'm not going to try and waste too much time trying to outthink the problem, because I have little control other than where I put that X in the box, and who knows even if that makes any difference at all. But in the meantime, I want to focus on what I can control, and that's my body, that's my finances, that's my faith, that's my family, all these things mostly beginning with F. Now, I've found that since I've been doing this, there is a lot less noise. There's more clarity, definitely a lot less outrage, and one thing I do like, more agency. Now, nothing has changed, I would say, about the externals, but what is changing is how I'm responding to them, and it's taking a little bit of conscious effort, and I'm having to check myself and notice how I'm responding to things, and I'm having to actively make decisions. Nope, I'm not going to get angry about that. I'm just going to get on with the things that are important to me. And the way of looking at it is I'm starting to think locally and less looking globally. So where does this leave us? I think since the beginning of time, the world has always been in a mess. But here's the point, you don't need to absorb it. You don't need to carry it. In fact, you were supposed to live differently. We're all supposed to live differently. And live as an example to others, especially if you're a Christian and you get sucked into all this culture war stuff. Evil is always going to be with us. But here's the thing, I can't carry the outrage and the suffering of people who are thousands of miles away. I am learning that I actively have to work towards staying in the light, because the gravitational pull of the darkness yanks me in. If I have to give you one piece of advice, see this thing here? Put it in another room. Keep it as far away from you whenever you don't need it. This is the portal to Nietzsche's abyss. Stay close to what is real and don't let the darkness become your home, because evil loves a man who lives in global despair. It makes him neglect his local responsibilities. And the curious thing is, the more we get sucked into the news cycle and all the threats, and we read about it and we almost suck it like a boiled sweet to get the maximum juice out of it. Yes, in the moment it makes us feel very aware and very able to deal with things, but actually what it's doing is quite insidious. It is making us less present, it is making us less joyful, and it is making us less effective and less pleasant to be around. So I hope that thought resonates with you. If it did, please give me a thumbs up. I'd be delighted to hear your comments so you can tell me if you're getting sucked into the matrix as well. And also, if this type of material resonates with you, please do think about subscribing. I really would appreciate it. Thank you.